Hey everyone, welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're decoding a really fascinating intersection of classical philosophy and spiritual karma. We're looking at a framework derived from a text by Xu called Life Guide with Philosophical Dialectics. If you've ever wondered how abstract, universal laws might actually dictate your daily choices, your personal karma, and even the destiny of the entire human race, well, you are in exactly the right place.
Okay, let's dive right into this with a quote straight from the source that immediately sets a deeply dialectical tone. To be free from ego is to achieve ego. To own nothing is to own everything. Sounds completely paradoxical, right? But this perfectly captures the essence of what we're unpacking today. It's all about finding truth and balance right in the very heart of contradictions.
To make sense of all this, we're going to quickly walk through a 5-part roadmap. First, the eyes of philosophy. Second, the unity of opposites. Third, quantity evolving into quality. Fourth, the negation of negation. And finally, energy, karma, and life. Let's get into it.
So starting off with part 1, the eyes of philosophy, seeing the specific within the general.
To really grasp this whole framework, we first need to understand Xu primary metaphor. He compares philosophy to the human body. It's broad, it's general, and it covers the overarching nature of the universe. Dialectics, on the other hand, are the eyes of that body. They're narrow, specific, and hyper-focused on the contradictory movements of things. You need the body to just exist, obviously, but you absolutely need the eyes to actually see where you're going. But what exactly are those eyes looking for? Well, real evidence. The source text actually critiques other philosophies for severing the unity of opposites. Pure idealism, like certain forms of religion, ignores real, tangible existence. On the flip side, pure materialism, or pragmatism, focuses only on existence but completely ignores the spiritual root causes. The system Xu outlines absolutely demands real evidence. He contrasts this with Lao Tzu's abstract Tao, pointing out that without extreme wisdom, concepts like an evasive life force are just too elusive to practically guide our daily lives.
Moving right along to Section 2, the unity of opposites, the organic unity of contradictory forces.
Now that we've got dialectics as our metaphorical eyes, let's look at the first grand application of this tool. The unity of opposites is defined as a universal law stating that all things consist of pro and con factors, which are opposite, incompatible, and contradictory as fire and water. The paradox here is kind of beautiful. It's precisely this intense clash of contradictions that actually makes the world complex, vibrant, and colorful, rather than just a flat, boring gray canvas.
Think about the everyday complementary pairs we see all the time. Positive balances negative, light balances dark, true balances false, yin balances yang. But then the source goes a step further, stretching this law to the tangible, balancing the intangible, and mortal life balancing the very concept of God. The universe demands that you literally cannot have one side of the table without the other existing to balance it out.
So the crucial point here, and this is a big one, is how this directly applies to us. The text argues that because we humans exist in the physical world, God simply must exist in the intangible world to maintain that structural balance. Our knowledge and focus must therefore expand beyond the tangible present to the infinite, non-material afterlife. It challenges us to take a pretty remarkable leap of faith, using a strictly logical law of opposites to justify spiritual existence.
All right, Section 3, quantity evolving into quality. The slow accumulation of change.
This brings us to the actual nuts and bolts of how transformation happens. The law of mutual change of quality and quantity dictates that any change of quality must be based on a saturated accumulation of quantity passing a critical point. Think about how this guides us. The text uses a great analogy here. 1,000 miles can't be covered without accumulating small steps, and rivers are only formed by the integration of tiny little streams. But how does this apply to our spiritual evolution?
Let's see how this builds. Xu explains that humans, gods, and Buddha are all just life, capital L-I-F-E, but of different natures. Humans have human nature. Gods have divine nature. To evolve from human to divine, you must accumulate small steps of divine actions. Once you reach a saturated accumulation of that quantity, you pass a critical point, and your human nature sublimates into a divine, godlike nature. It is literally spiritual evolution through incremental, daily practice.
Next up, Section 4, the negation of negation, the true meaning of new conquering old. This third dialectical law really trains us to look past superficial appearances. The negation of negation concludes that new things, which align with objective developmental laws, absolutely must conquer old things that run counter to them. But the source text offers a pretty stern warning here. You have to determine if something is truly new or just old by looking closely at its core nature, not just its outward form.
Now, what's really interesting about this concept is contrasting old nature in new forms against truly new things. For example, Xu argues that the shift from traditional manufacturing to infotech or service industries isn't actually new. It's still driven by the exact same old nature of the profit motive. Similarly, a lot of new religions are just old variations fermented in old nests. They are superficial form changes, not true structural shifts in nature.
So what actually qualifies as a true new thing? The author gives a pretty striking example: the decline of the traditional family and the rise of singles or high divorce rates. The text posits this as an objective law shifting our entire mode of life, and objective laws do not care one bit about subjective human rebellion or resentment. But embracing these true new things guarantees arduous suffering. The old ways might be super comfortable, but their path is narrowing. Developing the new is torturous, but its path ultimately widens.
Which leads us to this incredibly encouraging takeaway from Xu. The prospects of old things are dark, but the prospects of new things are bright. Yes, the process of aligning with new objective laws is torturous and difficult, but enduring that process guarantees you're walking a path that is continually widening into the light.
And that brings us to our final part, Section 5, Energy, Karma, and Life, the ultimate conservation of existence. Here is where all these abstract laws really tie together into the ultimate questions of human destiny. The text states, karma is the shadow following a body. It's basically the dialectic of giving and taking. Positive and negative energies always balance out. If you constantly give and contribute, paying without receiving in this mortal world, you accumulate treasures in the non-material afterlife. When you pay, you must receive. If the mortal world doesn't pay you back, the next life definitely will, maintaining a perfectly fair universe. This feeds directly into the conservation of energy and life. This universal law states that the total energy, including the total quantity of life in the universe, is completely constant. It's destiny. Just like yin cannot exist with yang, the global volume of water doesn't change. It just moves around from rivers to rain to snow. Life is the exact same way. It rises here, but sets there. It remains fundamentally constant.
But wait, think about the implications of that for just a second. If the total quantity of life in the universe is perfectly constant, where in the world does the massive explosive increase in the human population come from? Are new lives just popping out of thin air?
Well, to answer that, we have to look at Xu perspective on reincarnation. A new life will only be born when an old one passes on. There is no life without death. A reincarnated soul must enter a fetus for it to actually be considered life, meaning for a new human to be born right here, an old life had to end somewhere else to maintain that cosmic mathematical balance.
And this leads to a truly mind-bending hypothesis from the author about this grand cosmic balance. If the quantity of life is totally constant and human populations are exploding, where is that life force coming from? Well, Xu suggests that the souls of extinct animals on Earth might actually hold the answer. Mass animal extinctions could literally be fueling human birth rates as life simply shifts forms across the globe.
It is a totally profound, paradigm-shifting way to look at the world, isn't it? Which leaves us with this final question. How will you use the eyes of dialectics to navigate the karma, suffering, and energy of your own life, whether it's evaluating the newness of your choices or understanding your cosmic energetic balance? This life guide framework challenges us to see the specific within the general. The author even suggests exploring something called 36-dimensional space for further answers if you want to dig deeper into this. Until next time, keep your eyes open and keep learning.